My presentation is called the 4 Ps. It was called 3 Ps as of last night, and then I thought of a 4th P. So 4 Ps. For those that were at a meeting a year ago, I did the 5 Ms as a presentation. And I went through that and said, where did I not hit on? Also pulling some of the themes from our one-on-one calls over the last 3 or 4 months. Some themes that I feel like are issues that we need to all solve. So we're going to go through the 4 Ps. We're going to start with product. Then we'll go into people, process, and profit. And these are just kind of takeaways, action items from each of the 4 categories. So when I say product, what I'm referring to in our business is what you actually deliver to clients, right? What is the tangible product? In our case, it's arguably a service, but for simplicity of labeling, I'm calling it a product. So this category would be how good is your product? How good is your service? And I think it's important, in my humble opinion, we don't spend enough time talking about the actual deliverable of our experience. We talk about marketing and sales and all the outside stuff, but if your product is not good, if your client experience is not good, no marketing is going to overcome that. So I use the example of a restaurant. If you look at local restaurants, most local restaurants become successful because of the quality of the food, not because they're marketing, right? They become good because of the quality of the food, the service that they give, not their marketing. There's not a lot of, at least around me, a lot of my local restaurants don't even market at all. And yet they have a surge of customers. Why is that? It's because somebody eats there, the experience is good, the food is phenomenal, and then they go share it with their friends. Now, obviously, we're not, in the restaurant business, but what does that mean for us? An audit of, are your clients leaving and saying, wow, this is phenomenal, I need to go tell somebody? And if not, that's probably a sign that your actual workouts, for most of us, that's our product, is our workouts, are not as good as they could be, right? So auditing that, what does that mean? For those familiar with Good to Great and the hedgehog concept, Jim Collins talks about the hedgehog concept, and one of them is, what are you the best in the world at? And I would say, to simplify that relevant to brick and mortar folks, what are you going to be the best at in your community? Because I would argue if you offer, say, small group personal training, you don't really, there's a deer in the backyard, by the way. You don't need to be the best in the world. You just need to be the best in your community for that thing, right? So it's cliche, but the simple scales, fancy fails, right? For those of us that maybe have 5 different things that we do, you can't be the best in the world at 5 things. It's just not humanly possible. So looking at our service, looking at our product going into 24, I would be asking myself, what is the thing that I can be the best in the world at? And focus 100% on that. Not trying to grow 6 different things, because you're going to grow each of them marginally rather than blowing up one thing. Okay. Something that we've done that has been, again, some of these sound rudimentary, but you look at the action items behind them. We went this year even narrower with our niche. And so we always talk in business about niching. And this year, for those that aren't aware, we did like a 30% price increase, got rid of 60 to 80 clients, and narrowed down our niche to only women over 50. So it started out as, kind of general fitness, and we had like the young soccer moms and like the 65-year-old who was injured. And then we kept narrowing. Then we became basically women only. But then we still had the 35-year-old that's like wanting to go attack and more of like the aggressive style training right next to the woman who's, got the hip replacement and needs more of that rehab. So we said, who do we like to serve, and how can we continue? I mean, for those that don't know, we've been doing this 12 years, so it's not like you can still do this, not just when you initially choose to start the business, right? A lot of us chose when we first started, this is the model we're going to run, this is who we're going to work with. You can still evolve that over time. So we said, well, okay, we're going to focus exclusively on women over 50, and unless you are doing small group personal training at 2 to 3 times a week, we don't want to work with you. And so we bumped up our prices. We got rid of 80 clients. And so we now have to manage 80 less people, and our finances and profit margin are the exact same. And we'll talk to it next about matching that avatar. So audit your everything from your marketing messaging to how you reach out, your language, your facility design, your staff, and your community events to match your avatar. And this is a mistake that I think as we continue to grow and you continue to maybe work with a potentially different avatar or a different group of clientele, how you started your studio or your gym, it may not match what you built may not match the avatar that you currently serve right now. So let me give you some examples. Your offer that you need for a female over the age of 50 who's injury prone may be different than the large group training boot camp person, 35-year-old woman, right? When we look at methods of reach outs, we are doubling down on phone calls and voicemails because our market still likes to talk on the phone. And so I'm not saying that you should go double down on voicemails and phone calls. I'm saying do a deep audit of which of your avatar, what is their preferred method of contact? And are you just doing text because everybody in the industry does text, or are you doing text because your avatar likes to text? So I'm not saying we're abandoning different methods of reach outs. I'm saying study your avatar, study how they prefer to communicate, and that's how you should be reaching out to them. The language that you use, right? So the language in your branding, the language in your messaging, what words does your avatar connect with? Fitting that more in, this all, in my opinion, increases the quality of your product. Studio, or I know some of you use the word facility studio. I'm going to use those interchangeably today. The design of it is one of the most underutilized or under-discussed topics in this industry because it's a physical space, and they're walking into it 2, 3, 4 days a week. And so everything from the smell, the feel, the colors, it should match your avatar. So examples, when I first built the gym, I had he's become a good friend. He's a muralist. And for those that have seen our properties, he also goes to our properties and does murals at our properties. And he's phenomenal. It's all hand spray painted. And we, over the years, have had to literally take a roller, paint over, because the aggressiveness, we did like the brick wall for the med ball wall when we first started. You have to paint over that, and you make it softer, brighter, more appealing to the older female population. Not as intimidating when they walk in. Small things like, and maybe these are details that you don't think matter. I think they matter, so I'll share them. We have all of our plates are colored. We spent the couple extra bucks to get colored plates because I feel like it is a more softer, inviting feel to a woman that's never been in the gym as opposed to black, 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 black rubber, right? So when you look at equipment selection, when you look at layout of the facility, Ben made a joke about cobwebs. If you work primarily with women, they care 10 times more about cleanliness than men. So how much time are you spending into cleaning? What does your cleaning operations look like? This is what I mean about just a deep dive. And I would say treat today more as like what areas do you need to audit about your business, right? So with your product, are these are these things that you may have to audit to potentially change? This next one, the staff, matching your avatar. I had a call a week ago, 2 weeks ago, guys, about your evals. So Melanie and Jason did evals with their, sent out surveys to the clients that they filled out about coaches, and they have a couple of younger coaches and a couple more older coaches, experienced coaches, and we were talking through why, the survey obviously preferred the older and more arguably mature, more confident coaches. And sure, some of that you can teach, but the reality is, if your avatar is a woman over 50, they're gonna be naturally more, the speed of rapport building is gonna happen a lot faster with a trainer who's also that demographic. So obviously with hiring practices and things like that, we have to be careful. But if you're comparing apples to apples when you hire, and one is closer to your avatar and one is not, if it's apples to apples, I'm going with the staff member that's closer to your avatar. So, I know a lot of us work with older population, but yet have young trainers. And that can be, when you look at the quality of your product, that can be something that, again, I realize, you can't go out and advertise that I'm only hiring certain ages or anything like that. But just in your screening and as you continue to grow your businesses going forward into next year, I would look at that. And then also teach, we'll talk about it under people more, but teach the younger staff, because so my director of client experience right now, many of you used to know the term Mel, she has been exchanged for Kenna, who had just turned 21. So I went from Mel, who was a mom of 3 kids, completely relatable, to Kenna, who's 21, still trying to figure out life. Skill sets, I would argue, are the exact same. But connection and what they talk about with a 21-year-old is not going to be the same as a relatable mom with 3 kids. So, and then the final thing I would say that must match your avatar is your community events. And maybe this is a mistake that you haven't made, but I know I've made it, which is we like the Tough Mudders, we like even things like community 5Ks. This past month in October, we ran our 8th annual charity 5K, and we decided it's the last year we're running it. And it's because our market is even further progressed into a 5K is too much for them. So we're talking next year about potentially doing a charity walk, right? Or maybe even, like all of you know, pickleball is all the rage. So do we run a charity pickleball tournament, right? We still want the charity benefit. We still want this big annual thing. But over the last 8 years, we've attracted a clientele who even getting up to do a 5K is intimidating. They don't even want to tackle it. So what type of events, charity workouts, another big one. I know, somebody like a Levi type model might crush a charity workout. We used to crush charity workouts when we worked with the younger population. We used to crush charity workouts pre-COVID when people were totally cool putting 100 people in the gym. And now charity workouts are, in our business, almost non-existent, because there's other ways to raise money for charity, do good in your community that match your avatar. So when you look at your marketing calendar, when you hear ideas go around the room, I would just ask that you audit, does that match my avatar, right? All right, if we can scroll down a little, Holly, that'd be great. Thank you. So consistency kills with your product. We know this. Look at the brands that are successful, right? One challenge in this group that I always have to y'all is, and this is going to sound a little bit negative, but don't look at the fitness industry. Look at other industries. I believe there's a lot more you can learn looking outside of our industry than you can in our industry at this group, at this level, right? Because you've hopefully learned the basics, right? And you're hopefully trying to rise above the majority, right? And so if you look at it, don't look at what other training gyms are doing. Don't look at what other studios are doing. Look at what other businesses are doing outside of it. And if you look at it, a lot of us went to Starbucks this morning. We can use that as a very cliche example. Louisville, Kentucky, same drink ordered. Kennymunk, Maine, same exact drink, right? Consistency kills. So some problems that in our industry, what does that mean? Is your product, if I walk into your gym and take a 6 a.m. session with you, is the experience different if I come back tomorrow at 4 o'clock with your trainer that you hired 6 months ago? Is the experience different? If so, that's your number one priority, because your product is inconsistent, and thus the snowball effect of that. What is the snowball effect of that? Well, I came with you and it was great, and then I showed up the next day and worked with Trainer Mary, and Trainer Mary was not great, so I'm just going to go back and work with you. And then you show up and you're like, well, everybody wants to work with me. I'm like, yeah, because it's a better product. So make it consistent, and how do we do that? We'll get into it, but that's training your team, right? Training your team, training the standards. Tony Robbins has this thing, this chart. You can Google it. It's called the 6 human needs. And I believe that in the gym business, the 3 out of those 6 that matter in regards to our auditing our service are certainty, variety, and connection. So depending upon your operating personality, you probably jive more towards connection is obvious, right? How do you build connections within your community? The connection audit, I would say, my audit in your business for connection is a client connected to multiple staff? That's my connection audit. Audit any client if they only work with one staff member, if they only have a connection with one staff member. That is a massive priority for product improvement. How do I get this person connected to multiple people, right? In regards to certainty and variety, certainty would go back to what I just talked about as far as a consistent product, right? I don't want to walk in every day to a completely different gym. I don't want to walk in, I know where I put my keys now, I know where I check in, I know where I warm up. Don't change it on me every single day. At the same time, if you never change it, for those that don't like change, your clients get bored and leave. And we know this, but look at, okay, what aspects of my client experience have so much variety, arguably it's inconsistent, and that's actually negative, versus, well, we've been doing this the same way for 3 years, and that's why our average client stays 3 years. That was a big audit for me, is I looked at our average client stays about 32 months right now. And I was like, well, what happens at 32 months on average? They get bored because they've been doing the same thing for 3 years. And it was great. Consistency is great in the beginning, and now they want variety. And we were so consistent that we weren't actually giving them a ton of variety. So certainty and variety, yin and yang, you need both in the client experience. Give them a roadmap and then move to milestones. So, roadmap in the beginning, and I will post ours in the group. A roadmap is a one-page sheet that you give every new client that says, do this, then this, then this, then this. It's step by step by step. There is no multiple paths, right? When a client first joins, they follow a roadmap. Right? There is no, I would make a case when we talk about people, it's very similar with your staff. When you first hire a staff member, I recommend that every week you follow the same course, module, 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 module. Clients in the beginning need a roadmap to follow. Once they graduate from the roadmap, they move to hitting certain milestones. And I outline what I feel from a consistency, is my product good enough audit, a minimum of 6 milestones. The first milestone is right away. I recommend that right away, depending upon going back to method of your avatar, depending upon how your avatar consumes, I recommend right away, literally like before they get home from their signing up from membership, they have a video from you or somebody on your team welcoming them to the studio, to the facility that you're excited to work with them. Milestone number 1 is designed to eliminate buyer's remorse. I just signed a 12-month agreement. I got to go now tell my husband that I did that, and he's going to ask, why is this gym $300 a month, right? So buyer's remorse kicks in right away, 24 to 48 hours. We need to have some point of contact to eliminate that. I find the best thing to eliminate that is a video, a welcome video. Not a welcome email that gets buried and the video doesn't get watched, but literally just text them the video. Milestone number 2 is the first day. So first workout, give them a win right away. It sounds obvious, but again, if I walk in at 6 a.m., you might give me a win. But if I walk in at 4 p.m., is that trainer giving me a win? So a win can be in their program. It could also be something like, many of you know, we like the first workout t-shirt. We took that out of the welcome bag and give them a t-shirt for completing their first workout. A win like that, it's not about the t-shirt, it's about celebrating, hey, great job on your first day. Next milestone that you would want to have, and again, you're listening to this and you're saying, okay, well, is this happening? What I want you to think about is auditing, is this happening consistently? Is this a process in your business that if your trainers were listening, they're like, yep, that's our third milestone. Yep, we do that. And if they're not doing it, then we got to build it out, which we'll talk about under process. So give me a win within the first 7 to 14 days is milestone number 3. 7 to 14 days. The reason why I like 7 to 14 days is because I've come a couple times and I just want to be able to feel like I'm making progress right away. Give me a win that has a couple things stacked. So hey, day 1 you started here. Now you're a couple weeks in, look at just in the last 2 weeks how much progress you've made, right? And this is going to tie to your reach outs, how you're reaching out to clients, etc. Typically, we know that clients settle into routine around 28 to 42 days. 4 to 6 weeks is typically, once they've joined, that's typically when they're like, okay, I know how to schedule. I've gone through a month-ish. Like this is hopefully now a routine. So give me a win. Is there something in your client experience, a deliverable, a text, something that is a win at that milestone? And then the 6th one, which I particularly think is the hardest one, because it's not as, I feel like you can script out milestones 1 through 5, right? Milestone 6 is the milestone when if client sits down with me and says, I want to, let's just use weight loss because it's easily measurable. I want to lose 15 pounds. Okay, we help you lose 15 pounds. What's next? And that milestone right there, where you've helped them hit their initial goal, or I would even say for a lot of us, clients don't even have goals. So the milestone could be they are now just in the routine and they are very comfortable. Like where is that stage where they are very comfortable in your community and now they're looking for the next thing, right? They could bounce to the next shiny object at this point. It's not that they're not getting results. They could bounce to the next shiny object. And so as far as, you might ask, how do we overcome that? How we overcome that is we find stereotypically it's usually around 6 months. And that's why we have a specific reach out, a specific t-shirt, a specific text, all at the 6-month mark. Because it's far enough out where hopefully you've gotten some results, you've probably met some of your initial hurdles, you're comfortable with the community, and you're just looking for what's next. Okay?
Was that milestone 5 or did you delete one? Or?
Sorry, yes, milestone 5, thank you. Good edit. You're good? All right, I saw a note, I believe it was Greg, but I could be wrong, about 10 times value. So that term gets thrown around a lot. What does 10 times value actually even mean, right? And this is where, to wrap up product, I would say, how can you give me the results I'm looking for as quickly and as easily as possible? So what does that look like? I have a belief, and actually picking on Greg for a minute, when Greg and I first started working together, in order to become a client at his studio, I had to fill out this gigantic questionnaire and jump through several hoops to even become a client. And he was trying to build small group personal training, and we cut that by 50 to 60%. And so I'm not saying let's just throw people into a program and not care about who they are or what they have. But this morning, a lot of us pulled out our phone, made a couple check boxes, and had a Starbucks coffee in our hand in 5 minutes. And so the ease of becoming a client, how hard are you making it to actually become a client? If I have to jump through 17 hoops to become a client, right away that's a red flag. People don't have the time for that. Yes, I know they're all messed up and injured and you want to geek out and learn about all their crap, but do that after. So then as you continue on, making things as easy as possible. Easy. If I want to be able to come at different times, do I have to send you a text or an email to come at a different time? Or can I just go into my app and swap my time? How can we make things operationally as easy as possible for our clients so there's not the friction? Also, on your operations, I am always challenged with this. Well, we get all these, I think I've talked about this in a group call, but I'll reinforce it here. Well, I get all these emails. I spend my middle of the day answering client emails. I'm like, what do your clients need to email you about? What do they need to reach out to you about? And how operationally can you fast track that so that they don't have to reach out to you to schedule? You can schedule on an app. The amount of customer service in our business should be, I don't want to say eliminated, but it should be, for a lot of us, greatly reduced by just making it easier to work with you. It's too hard to work with you. I can only come at certain times. You lock me into Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9:30, and in order to come to a different time, I have to fill out a form and send you an email. And it's like, that's going to be really hard to compete with, in my opinion, in the current marketplace. So that's product. Again, I would use these lessons as audits for your business. Which of these do I have work on? And potentially, for the rest of this meeting, you identify, okay, well, based upon hearing that, these are the three things that I feel I'm missing for product, and maybe we can brainstorm that as a group. Okay? So let's move on to your people. So in regards to people, let's start with hiring, then development, then ongoing. So in regards to hiring with your people, when we talk about going and getting clients, a lot of us default to, okay, I need to go get clients. I'm going to go put together an offer. I'm going to go put together a sales page. And then I'm going to take that sales page and I'm going to disperse it in ads. I'm going to send emails to it. And then I go get clients. And I'm like, well, why don't you just do that same thing for your team? Like, make a sales page that says, here's how cool it is to work here, and here's what you're going to get out of it. And then run ads and send emails to it. So for some reason, we treat getting clients and getting team members differently. And I don't think it needs to be any different. I don't think it needs to be any different. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying you're going to, just like with a client, you're not going to send one email out and go get 10 clients. But if you stay consistent, if your sales page is good enough, if it's actually attractive to work at that company, just like it's attractive for a client to want to join that facility, if it's attractive to become a team member, if I'm reading that, I'm like, oh, I want to be a part of that company. If I want to be a part of that company, I'm going to apply. How hard is it to apply? Just like how hard is it to opt in? If I can click a button, that's why lead forms became so popular, right, on Facebook. I click a button and all my info is already filled in. I hit send, I'm good to go as a lead. Well, can we make it that easy to apply? Because from what I've heard from all of you, and I say all of you, not just in this group, but collectively as an industry, is that I'm not getting a lot of applications. It's not like I have 500 applications to sort through and I need to choose which of the 500. We have a different problem. I don't even get enough inquiries. So if you're not getting enough inquiries, make it more attractive on the sales page and make it easier. Do I have to fill out this 7-page Google Doc to apply to be a job, or can it just be name, phone number, email? And then I follow up. Because I'd rather take 15 minutes on a phone call and screen you out that way than have you jump through all these hurdles to apply. So mimic your marketing for clients. Mimic that same strategy for marketing to your team. For those of you that have multiple team members and are continuing to look to have what I would consider in our bubble a larger team, which I would generally consider large at our level 5+ team members. At that stage, it becomes really important to make sure that you have complementary personality types. and not all the same personality. And I would argue that is 10 times more important than their certification or their skill. So examples, you can use Lencioni's Working Genius. You can use the DISC. I don't necessarily care, have a preference. We use DISC. I know Jeff uses Working Genius. But you should have a good understanding of what are the personality types as you currently have on your team, and where are the gaps so that I can hire for that. Examples and how this actually matters. If you do not have anybody on your team that's a D, so let's use DISC because that's the one that we're most comfortable with. If you do not have anybody on your team that's a DISC, they're a driver, they tend to be very aggressive, I would bet if I was blindfolded and you just told me looking at nothing else in your business, and you told me, I know I don't have anybody on my team that's a D, I would tell you that you're not probably hitting sales goal and you're not hitting quota on certain things. You're not driving forward aggressively, because that's what Ds do. If you are lacking an I, people, it's probably a very boring gym. Clients get bored if you don't have an I. I are the people. They like to party, right? So if you don't have an I, and an I, going back to earlier, an I that is similar to your avatar, partying at 60 for women is going to look different than men at 30, right? So auditing that and saying, okay, I need a coach, but looking at my coaching team, well, I have that people person, but I don't have somebody that's real aggressive, right? The S is I call it the softie, but it's like I think they use the golden retriever as a kind of an animal for it, right? They're very loyal, so you typically don't lose S's once you hire them. They have a tough time changing. For those that have met Josh is a SC. And why does that matter? And how does that impact our business? He's not aggressive with change. I have to push the change, and then he is very loyal. He's very detailed, so he'll make sure it checks the box, but he's not going to go change something. He's not going to be aggressive. And so, again, that impacts the growth of your business because S's don't like change. And as we know, if we don't like change, we're not going to grow. So if you have all coaches that are S's, every time you go to implement a change, they're going to push back. And you're not going to have that one coach on your team that's like, yeah, let's go do that. That sounds cool. That's new, exciting. And then your C's are your detail people. They're your spreadsheets. They're process-based. They're checklist-based. They're very detailed. So again, it's not so much about the DISC here. It's more about always having a strong pulse of your coaching team and your team at whole and saying, well, okay, I know I need to hire, but not only the position, but sub of that position. As I'm looking at applicants, personally, I'm going to interview more to learn the personality than I am the skill set. Okay? And then when you do hire, this is talked about but not often measured, is you need to have a clear outcome with each hire. We are not a business that has an enormous amount of profit margin where if a hire doesn't work out, it's kind of like, okay. I mean, you're going to lose a lot of money if a hire doesn't work out, right? We're not corporate where we can go do this hiring frenzy, and if a bunch of them need to be laid off or a bunch of them don't work out, it's no big deal. For us, being a small business, single-digit employee count, every employee matters, every hire matters, and so we want to be very clear. I like to, you'll see down there, give myself a 90-day runway. I feel like, based on my experience, that's long enough to work with them, to train them, to get them onboarded. But why am I hiring this person? Am I hiring them so I don't have to be at the studio? Am I hiring them for financial reasons because I want them to go grow our sales? Are they being hired as an appointment setter? I mean, what is it, right? What's the goal? And is there a revenue ladder that you want to get to within 90 days of hiring that person? Or is there a certain amount, let's say that you're at the studio 30 hours a week, and with this hire, you want to be able to only be at the studio 15 hours a week, right? Give yourself that 90-day runway. It's not going to happen on day one, but all of a sudden, you can pick your head up, and many of you have been there, and you look and you're like, I have all these people, and I'm still just working just as hard. and making the same amount of money. And I've been there. And it sucks. So you got to change that and give yourself some clear measurables to say, okay, we're going to hire this person, and by 90 days in, I'm going to be 10 hours less at the studio, or I'm going to be up to 30,000 in revenue instead of 25,000, right? Whatever the measurable is, it needs to be measurable.
You guys have for revenue, you look more at ladders of this person needs to generate 2.5x their salary. We'll talk about it under profit, but yeah, a general rule of thumb is 2.5 times their expense is a general rule of thumb, which is 40%. That goes back to my 40% rule. 40% goes to payroll. 2.5x. So if I'm paying somebody 30 grand a year, now remember, in the model that I tend to prefer and steer people probably with bias to, is they're not the ones bringing in clients, right? The business is bringing in clients and then they are serving them. But they should open up capacity so that you as the marketer can then go fill that capacity, right? So it's not necessarily a direct, like, I'm going to hire John and John's going to go bring in 30 clients that are going to go get me 10 grand in revenue. It's more that John's going to open up the capacity for sessions so that I can go fill that, okay? But get clear on that. And some of it's revenue, but some of it, I would argue with this group, is your time. You are hiring your time. And so you might be, at the studio 30 hours a week. And so with this hire, you actually keep your profitability the same, but now you don't have to coach in the evening or fill in the blank, right? And then this is an obvious last one, but I had to fit it in based on our scale call on Monday. So I had our scale call on Monday, and there was this new gal in the program. And it kind of, for those that have heard this morning about like your action item this week could be, or your issue could be, I don't know what my priority is. I need help determining my priority. And that was kind of her thing. And she was just kind of venting. And she's like, yeah, I've had like 4 trainers in the last couple of years go across the street and open up studios. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what did you do proactively to prevent that? So this is, I originally didn't have this in until Monday. When you guys at this level, you gotta cover your ass. You have to. Get them to sign a lawyer-reviewed agreement, not some agreement that you took from me and modified and it's good. It's a template. Send it to the lawyer, and little random pro tip, lawyers are expensive, so don't say, hey, draft me an employee agreement. Send them an employee agreement and say, change this. Because it's cheaper to change it than it is to draft a new one. So take mine and say, hey, this is a main agreement. Make this specific to California, right? Here's what I'm trying to cover. The main 2 things you need to cover are non-solicit and non-compete.
They're not valid.
They're not valid in California. There's no such thing as a non-competing state.
You can't do it in California? Well, every time I come to a meeting, I'm like, I am never, ever opening up a business in California.
It's 2 degrees of enforceability in California, 0 degrees.
0.
Oregon
Yep.
is on spectrum.
So unless you're in California, you need to have a non-solicit, non-compete.
100%.
You can still have
trying to get out.
Can't enforce it.
Right. So you can kind of scare them with something, but you can't enforce it. And if they're smart enough, there you go.
Yeah, we use just to create conversation.
Yeah.
So that was what I was going to get to. So in 12 years, I've never taken any employee to court, and I never plan to take an employee to court. However, it's the same reason why I am not a fan. And again, I realize when I share stuff, I am biased, like anybody that presents. But we still have clients put pen to paper on agreements. And it's not because I'm going to hold you to a contract. It's because I feel with our avatar, they grew up signing paper documents. We do paper documents. Again, not that you should, but my avatar respects and admires a paper agreement. And like this whole letting you out, I'm not trying to handcuff you with contracts, but you just, I think, have a lot more seriousness with it. So if you are able to, let me preface that, if you are able to, personally, so for my Cali folks or any state where it's not enforceable, personally, for $250 phone call,
I'd be on the phone with my lawyer saying, what is the best I can do here? I know I can't be over here, but what is the best I can do? And I'm not trying to go cause more issues with my team. I'm just trying to set the standard from the beginning. That, hey, listen, when you become a team member here, we're going to be sharing all of our resources, and we hope that you stay here forever. But please know, if you ever leave, this is what we will enforce the day you turn.
Just a side note, or maybe helpful, but my attorney told me can't enforce really in Maine either. However, he said you can, and he goes, the likelihood in court of upholding and spending all this money on it, you're never going to happen.
Right.
But he goes, the awareness, and he said you can enforce like your IP in terms of the system and stuff that you go on.
Yeah.
So if you have what you do documented really well, essentially what they're signing off on is not the non-compete, it's that they can't take your ideas, move across the street and do it, which is enforceable on probably everywhere.
Right. So for clarity, just to not go down a rabbit hole with this one, I'm not saying let's go prepare for battle and sue your employees. What I'm saying is set the standard. Most of us, so I'm going to be talking about under people, but Mike Tomlin has the saying, the standard is the standard. I'm going to be very direct here. Most of us don't hold our team to standards. We just let them do whatever the hell they want. And if they make a mistake, we don't say anything about it. If they're not doing it up to par, we don't say anything about it. And we also, when they're doing it good, we don't say anything about it. So they're literally walking around like a swivel, like, am I doing good? Am I doing bad? I don't know, because my manager never tells me anything. And so from day one, if I sit Ben down and I'm like, Ben, I am so excited that you're joining Spurling Fitness. This is going to be awesome. I hope you never leave. But please know, if you do end up terminating your agreement with us, this is what we will enforce. Unless you present it like that, they're not going to respect it as much. And so do I ever plan on enforcing it with Ben in that example? Of course not. I'm not going to go waste all that lawyer fees if they go decide to open it up. However, I think it sets a firm standard. Going back to one of my themes that I am very big on, when somebody is with you in the beginning, team member or client, I feel that they should not have a ton of width. They should have very tight guardrails. Team members, very tight guardrails. Clients, very tight guardrails. Meaning, give me my roadmap to follow. What's next? What's next? Don't let me go this way. Let me just go to the next step. Then you build up trust. You build up rapport, just like with team, with clients. Now clients have a little bit more autonomy. Team members have a little bit more creativity, a little bit more autonomy. So I'm not saying it stays like this the entire time, but it should stay like that until you have rapport and trust, and then it can fan out. All right, development-wise, I kind of just hit on this. I know a lot of you already have this in place, so I feel pretty good about this one. But somewhere between 4 and 12 weeks of a structured onboarding, this is what you cover each week in the beginning. Okay, mine's in the group if you need it, but it's somewhere between 4 and 12 weeks, very structured, weekly modules. And please, as you continue to hire, budget 10% of their time for training time. So if I'm hiring somebody for 15 hours a week, 1.5, 10%, should be for training with you. If I'm hiring somebody 40 hours a week, 4.0, 4 hours should be for training. A mistake we make, again, I've made it, so I'm just sharing it so that hopefully maybe you don't make it. You bring somebody on and you don't have any budget for training. You don't have any time for training. And you're trying to train with clients, it's scattered. So in the beginning, keep it tight, 10% of their time. And then this last one is the most uncomfortable one, but I would argue is the most important with your team, which is role play, role play, role play, role play. There was a theme on Tuesday's call about not assuming that somebody knows something, right? Oh, I thought the team knew this. I thought they knew how to do this. So in sports, some of you are bigger sports fans than others. I probably fall in the middle compared to some of you. But I am aware enough to know that they never show up on game day without practicing first, right? They practice behind the scenes. They run the play. And they practice it and practice it and practice it and practice it. and then they show up on game day and do it. So my audit for you is how much are you practicing with your team? And not presentation, right? This is a presentation, right? Hopefully a little bit of interactive, hopefully some discussion after the fact, whatever, but it's largely presentation to you. And a mistake that I made in the past that I would challenge you not to make is your team meeting should not be this format. Your team meeting should not be you talking at your team. Your team meeting should be them showing you what they're supposed to be doing. What is the practice, right? So practicing, hey, it's a Friday night and you're here by yourself. Somebody walks in, what do? Don't teach them what to do. Say, what would you do? Show me what you would do. And then you correct it, and then they show it to you again, and it's uncomfortable and it's awkward, but guess what? That's where the growth happens. So role play, role play, role play, practice, practice, practice. All of our team meetings now are practical. We do, I would say, maybe 10 to 15 minutes of setting the standard in the beginning, presentation, and then we move to practice, role play.
Can you speak to about how to handle this with independent contractors versus employees?
As far as getting them to, well, globally speaking, we're not fans of independent contractors for that reason, because you can't mandate it.
I don't have any employees. Everybody's an independent contractor.
So you're handcuffed. You can't. That's the short answer. I mean, legally, you.
Well, I mean, like just trying to get a team meeting is impossible.
Yep. So for those of you that maybe some of my folks that have several part-timers, I know, is it Jeff? You guys do once a month, right?
Can I speak to
what?
This part? Once a month also. My law background here.
Yeah, once a month. So a lot of this is, I'm going to let Pat speak to it, but a couple things that I often get pushback with this. And here's my whole goal with this, I'll summarize my entire goal with this program. Don't focus on what you've been doing. Focus on what you can do going forward so that when you're sitting in this room 12 months from now, maybe you don't have independent contractors. Maybe you do have employees that can show up to meetings. So I don't want to hear, no, I can't do that. I want to hear, well, going forward, currently I have this, but going forward, I'm going to hire people by an employee basis so that I can have meetings. You will not scale your business outside yourself without team meetings, black and white, without it, because the experience will never be consistent. It will never be consistent. So right now, you may have, like Melanie and Jason went through it with part-timers not being able to get to it. Then they looked at their staff and said, okay, can we shrink our staff and move people more to a beefier part-time so that they can be at meetings? Jeff has, I think, the largest team in our group, to my knowledge, and so he only does once a month. Who was it on Monday's call? Was it you guys? There was somebody that was like, we need to plan it out the whole call, who was it? Was it Courtney? Yeah. So Courtney, Jeff's director, was like, we literally need to sit down and map out the 2024 calendar and say, these are our meetings for 2024. And so it's about just being proactive. As far as the independent contractor stuff, I'll let Pat speak to that.
There are a couple things. Number one, I mean, you pay people to attend things, right? And so it's a session. If they want to be paid, they come, but then make that when you disseminate the hours. And the only way that hours are available is if you're at a meeting. Like, and if you're not at a meeting, you're not on the schedule, because the people who, like, that's when we hand out the sessions, the clients, the hours, whatever the bait is to attend. There's kind of a gray area everywhere, right? Like, there's this tipping point where you can't dictate so many things about being somebody who's doing something. But frankly, there has to be a kind of a portal, a gateway, a transfer of giving somebody the thing to do that they can do. Well, make that an attendance-based thing that, okay. I mean, because some way you have to be able to hand them whatever responsibilities they have. Well, then they come to this or they don't get the responsibilities. But I will tell you that probably I'm saying the same stuff Doug's saying, but in a different way. I mean, a lot of times we kind of play the victim to the, like, well, they can't do this. Cool, they can't work here.
100%.
Right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to be held hostage by, like, because I'm the one who created the business. I'm not going to be held hostage by people who aren't invested in the business. And that doesn't mean that everybody has access to the same caliber potential team members. It doesn't mean, I mean, if you're in a town of 5,000 people, you got a pretty small pond to pull from, right? Some people have an ocean. But, I mean, one thing that I learned and had to be reminded of, as a college baseball coach, I learned very quickly, no matter what I did as a coach, if our players weren't better, we weren't going to be better. And so I wasn't going to be held hostage by, okay, I'm just getting players out of this pool, this, you know, the Southern Ohio pool, because we weren't going to be good enough, right? When I got back into business, I looked up in 2013, 2014, and I'm like, man, I've created this thing that's big and it's making me miserable. And, well, rule one, like when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. And then start to inch your way out of it, very much in line with what he just said. Like, you are where you are. And it is, I mean, the email I sent out today speaks to this exactly. Like, this is a lagging indicator of all the stuff that happened before. So, you get to decide if we're looking up and saying personal and professional wins in February, or personal and professional wins in the middle of summer, or personal professional wins next fall. You get to decide. Like, am I going to be in the same spot because I chose not to approach things differently? And sometimes you approach things differently and it doesn't help. But I can tell you that the thing that we are certain of is if you do it the same, it's not going to get better if it's not where you want it to be. So,
the last thing I would say with meetings, I want to be clear. I realize there's, you can take this too far and, pick your head up and all you're doing is meetings like corporate. That's why I say 10%. That has been very helpful for me as somebody that would, like, I don't know about all of you, but I'd live in this setting all day long, right? Meetings, like, it doesn't bother me. It's my personality type. At the same time, we got to go train people and make money, right? So 10% is healthy enough where you can feel like you're getting, because here's the challenge of our business is game day happens every hour. Every hour. There's training on the floor every single hour. And so it's not like in, my beloved Patriots who are terrible right now, they can practice all they want, but at least they get 3, 4, 5 days of practice with nobody, like no competition other than themselves to practice. And then they get to show it off. So we don't have that luxury. Every day is game day. Every hour is game day. And so we cannot expect to deliver a game performance, a good performance, if we're not getting some practice. So maybe the filter for some of you is where am I practicing with my team? Not so much needs to be a weekly meeting, a monthly meeting, just more how am I practicing with my team? All right, if we can scroll, that would be great. All right, so ongoing, it's funny, this is going to lead very nicely. Ongoing, two things. So they're past, let's call it the 60 to 90 day mark. They're doing their thing. You don't probably need to be training them individually on the basics. They know the basics. There are two things that I have talked about in the past. I want to make sure that I believe at this level you should have implemented, which is the 515 form, which is a Google form. You can search it in the group if you don't have it. It's 5 questions they fill out every Friday, and they fill it out. You review it. If you need to have a 15-minute meeting the following week, a 15-minute check-in, you do. I would argue for most of you, it's more the rhythm of filling out the form, and it's about how their week went, and not letting. I'm trying to use recent examples from those in the group. Shelby brought up a scenario of a client who, I believe, right around day 90 was kind of a bit disgruntled, and he was like, "Well, what can we put in place so that we catch that at day 14?" Right? So that we can fix that before they get to day 90, whatever the issue was. It's the same thing with your team. They may have, it doesn't need to be a big, I use the term rock in the shoe a lot with our team. It does not need to be like, you need a new job, you need to quit, you need a raise. Like, it's just 52 little rocks in your shoes. That's all it is. It's like, how was the week? What do you need? What do you, like, talk to me about your sessions. Did you think they went well? Cool, awesome, high five. Oh yeah, I had this one client. Okay, cool, let's troubleshoot that. Like, it doesn't need to be this gigantic boulder. It's just a little tiny pebble in their shoe that's bothering them, something they want to talk about. And by having that 515 in place, the most you're going to go is a week with that rock in the shoe. You're not going to go 6 months. And then the team scoreboard. Ever since our buddy Sumit shared his scoreboard, I adopted that one. And I know Pat's using it internally with the team. And it's I would say, one of the more impactful things I've done in the last 6 months with the team is having them fill out the scoreboard. Because one, time saving for us operationally. Josh used to look at those numbers, so things like session utilization rate for those that have coaches do reach outs. How many reach outs are they doing? Josh used to pull those numbers, so that's time on him to pull those numbers, and then he would go over it with them. And now, as part of their scoreboard, they were taught how to pull those numbers, and they report on them each week. So it's a time save for us, but also it's good awareness for them because they know what good looks like. And we match, for clarity, we match our scoreboard to our 6-week sprint. This is very important. The scoreboard is for 6 weeks, and it matches our 6-week sprint. So it's not saying that these are the numbers that you need to check in with every week for the rest of your life or tenure here. It's saying, based upon our 6-week sprint, as a team member, here are the 3 to 5 things that I want you to check in every week on for the next 6 weeks. So it's aligned with our 6-week sprint, and then when we create a new 6-week sprint, they get a new scoreboard. So it doesn't also, going back to certainty and variety, there's certainty for the 6 weeks and clarity for the 6 weeks, but there's also some variety within it. Knowing that 6 weeks from now, if we or they decide, like, this number's stupid, I don't need to track it, it's not telling me anything, or I'm checking in on this every week, but I don't need to, I can throw it out and get rid of it. And yes?
Do you ever ask the question on the 515, what's the rock in your shoe?
Oh, all the time.
Oh.
Yeah.
I need to.
As long as you explain, as long as you give them context to what that means. Yeah. Yep. Going back to the 515, you have to change those questions. You cannot ask them the same questions. We typically change those, probably tweak them, one question here and there once a month. They don't want to be answering the same questions week after week after week after week after week. Okay. And the other 5 is 5 minutes. Don't make your form 17 questions and they have to, take a pot of coffee to fill out their 515. It should be short and punchy. Okay. We kind of already hit on this, but I'll put a little bit of a different spin on it. I believe he was the one that created it, but Mike Tomlin with the Pittsburgh Steelers had this little media clip that was like, the standard is the standard. And this goes back to what I believe, and again, this is just my belief, but what I believe at this level is one of your biggest challenges is you don't hold your team to standards. You are at this level, you are doing a good job understanding operations, you're hiring, you are documenting processes, you're getting there, and the next level of growth is actually holding your team in a positive way to the standard. So please don't take this as in you always need to be cracking the whip, it always needs to be negative. It's continually reinforcing what good looks like. It's not saying that we're constantly telling people that you're doing bad. It's just reminding them that the standard is up here. And guess what? As your team continues to grow, everybody falls to the low man or the low woman. So if everybody is doing it up here, then everybody coming in is going to do it to this level. But if I'm new and I come in and everybody's doing it down here, I'm just going to blend right in with them. So going forward, if you continue to set high standards as you bring new people in, I don't know about you, but every year you're probably going to be bringing new people in at some capacity, even if it's just one. Most of us are hiring at least once a year. Every year, if you continue to set the standard and hold the current team to the standards meaning this is what time you show up, this is what time you leave, this is what a good session looks like, this is what you should be doing during a session, and holding that as the standard, then as people come in, they're rising up to that. They're not falling below that. As far as a formal, somebody asked this, Jenny Bird asked this in IBA yesterday or a couple days ago, so I thought it was good to share here. We follow football, not baseball. So baseball has the 3 strikes out. Football is 4 downs. So common in you've heard the 3 strikes or you're out in discipline. We follow 4 strikes or 4 downs. So what does this look like? The first time that somebody is doing something that I don't feel is, or we don't feel is up to standard, so going about setting standards, I get curious. So there's a saying, if you're furious, get curious. I get very curious, like, hey, what happened here? What's going on here? Tell me more about that. And it could be anything. It could be a small thing. It doesn't need to be anything big. It could be that they're not showing up on time. It could be that they're not hitting session announcements. It could be that they're coaching the exercise not the way you want it to do. Just get curious. Hey, why are you doing it this way? Tell me more about that. Always, always, always extreme ownership. I know that's basic and has been talked about a lot, but is much harder to actually implement and say, well, this is my fault because I did not train that well enough. That's the first thing we do is get curious, and we're like, okay, well, this is my fault because I clearly did not train the standard high enough. So I'm going to take extreme ownership, and then I'm going to reinforce and train the standard. This is okay. That's okay. You did it this time, but as a reminder, this is the way we do it, and you train the standard. So that's down 1. Then they get to down 2, which is it happens again, and you remind them here. There's no curiosity because it happened twice, right? Once is on me, twice is on you. It happened twice. And now I'm reminding them of the standard, and I'm telling them, next time we're going to have to document this. So for those of us that have trainers that show up late, right, that's usually a common one. Not delivering the session or not being on the floor a certain amount of time ahead of time, whatever the standard is, right? Not doing enough phone calls. We have our admin, when she first started with us, she was not making enough phone, she was not calling every lead because she was afraid. And so I said, the standard is to call every lead. Is there a reason that you're not doing it? I'm not comfortable. Okay, cool. Let's train that more. Then it's a training opportunity, right? And so down 2 is to reinforce the standard, remind them that next time we need to document this as an action plan. And then 3rd down is we document it. We have a form called the Discipline Documentation Form. I posted it in Jenny Bird. If you type in Bird or Jenny, maybe Holly can tag, I don't know, whatever. It's in IBA. It's a simple Google Doc that says this is what happened, this is the date. And again, going back to my contract stuff, it is not about the write-up. It's about the conversation that happens and the tonality of that conversation. It's not about the form. It's about having a form so they're like, oh shit, he's actually serious about this. Rather than just like, hey, come on, let's show up on time, right? So the tonality at the 3rd down is much more like, hey, let's sit, go over this, let's document it, and if this continues to happen, we're done. And then 4th down, if you don't convert on 4th, you're out, right? So if you have to get past the documentation with somebody with a behavioral issue, I believe you are babysitting them. And none of us are in the business of babysitting. And so if I have to babysit an employee, they're not worth it. They're not. So give them some grace, get curious, train the standard. But if you have to get to 4th down, it's probably time to move on. All right, last 2 things. At this level, ongoing, they crave mentorship and growth. Mentorship and growth. So mentorship does not need to come from you. This is a big thing for those of you that are starting to get to a size of 3, 4, 5, 6 team members. you can create some mentorship within that is not from you. An example that I was talking through with Melanie and Jason last week was going back to their survey where, okay, these veteran coaches were getting great feedback, but the new coaches weren't. Well, cool. Melanie can come in and help that new coach, that young coach. But I believe it would actually be more impactful if there was some peer-to-peer mentorship. And that veteran coach kind of took that young coach under the wing and said, hey, this is what works for me. Okay? And it doesn't have to be at a high level. That's why I like, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, so we can dive in. That's why I like the peer-to-peers, where one coach takes another coach's workout at least once a month. And it doesn't need to be more than that, right? Like, hey, let me just jump in and see one of your workouts. I can see what's going on. I'll get a workout in, and I'll do some observing. So it doesn't need to be more than that. And then traditions and mantras. Traditions and mantras. This is not talked about enough. Look at families, look at cultures. They all have traditions, right? Apparently the Rigsbys have a big Halloween tradition. So every year, there's all this excitement leading up to Halloween. Then there's the fun of the Halloween. And then there's kind of the sadness that leaves, and what's the next thing? I would imagine, right? What's that of your team? Does your team have traditions where every summer they go, like for us, every summer we do a big team barbecue, right? Right now, I think it just wrapped up. I'm not familiar with it, but apparently our whole team is doing that Squattober thing with Sornex. I don't know much about it, but they're all like, hey, let's go do this Squattober thing. Go for it. Like it's traditions, it's sayings. That's why I know it's cliche, but that's why you'll hear from me the 4 Ps, the 3 Ps, all these acronyms, because I believe that people remember these. You, a year from now, will be like, yeah, that 4 Ps presentation. You're not going to remember all these 72 bullets, but you might remember, okay, 4 Ps. A team member is not going to remember a 2-page session standards checklist. They're not. But they might remember, hey, 3 Ps. Pace, presence, right? Like they can remember acronyms, they can remember mantras and sayings. Look at your sports teams. They have traditions, they have mantras. All right. Last thing under people, marketing and sales is the last thing you should hire. That's just a belief. Most of you don't fall into that trap, but please save the marketing and sales for the last. And then I've actually seen more success with a lot of you hiring coaching first and get yourself out of coaching than admin. And it sounds kind of backwards, and arguably this is not appropriate for a lot of you because you already have both. But you naturally at this level default to admin work, not coaching. Most of you are like, I want to get out of coaching. And so why not, and you don't have your admin processes documented. You don't have the standards documented. But you know what good coaching is. So why not hire out all the coaching so you don't have to coach and then work yourself out of an admin role? I'm not saying it's the only way, but I think if you look at your personality, it might be a way. This is recent with an example of a client that I won't share, but this client had a payroll that was a payroll of a business that is twice their size. Meaning like 60 to 70% of their revenue was going towards payroll because they're like, we're going to hire this, we're going to hire that. I want a director of this, and I'm going to hire out my social media. I'm going to hire this. So understand that this is all a continuum. You can be over here and be doing everything yourself, which is not good. But you can also be over here and have be in a position where you could hire too much out. And in my opinion, it's best for a lot of us in this room to think of yourself as the GM until you can afford to pay a GM. And we can slap a different title on it, director of training, facility manager, general manager, what have you. But you are the GM, so you need to pay and work like the GM. Meaning you fill in for the coaches when they're on vacation, you do the sales, you're checking in on leading the team. And until you have a revenue that can produce a payroll for a GM, you need to work and treat yourself like that. Just don't fall into the trap. We'll talk about under profit, depending upon time here. But don't fall into the trap of this enormous payroll and you have time, but you got no profit. Last couple bullets. This is a lesson that I've learned in the last year. Don't cheap out on B talent when A talent costs $2 more an hour. So at this level, let me do some quick math for you. You hire a coach at 20 hours a week. 20 hours a week and you pay them $23 an hour. $2 more an hour gets you that A player and it costs you 40 bucks a week. 160 bucks a month. For most of us, that's half a client. To go get the person that, like at our level, not our level, but our employees' level, the difference between 22 and 25, and these are anecdotal numbers, right? But you get the example. It can be a game changer for them, right? I go take somebody that was at 22 and pay him 20, 24, or 25. That's a big deal. But to a business that's doing 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a month in revenue, it's not going to change your payroll that much. So I'm not saying let's go overpay, but you may be missing out on that unicorn because of $2 an hour, and it's just not worth it, right? It's just not worth it. Content for coaches. This has been one that we just recently implemented in the last quarter-ish, really since the summer. All of our coaches produce a piece of content for us to go out in our 3 times a week email. And how this has been helpful is not so much in the content, but in that the clients who don't currently work with that coach get to know that coach. So we have coaches who are new or who work at a different time, and we would have, going back to your product and not having a client associated only with one client, you'd hear that client, we all have those clients, oh, I only work with so-and-so, I don't know so-and-so. Well, if they're putting content out, doesn't need to be a lot, once a month, twice a month, whatever, fit them into the rotation, and now over, again, not tomorrow, not next week, but you're sitting here in February, and all of a sudden, your clients better know that new coach, and they're more willing to sign up for their sessions. So sometimes it's not that the coaching, sometimes it's just, I don't even know who you are, so why would I show up for your workout? Versus if I read your story, read your writing, read your content, I feel like I know you through the email, now I'm more likely to work with you.
Doug, on that piece, are you giving them like 5 or 6 topics, like here, do a piece of content on one of these? Or are you just saying, hey, come, the expectation is once a month you need to come up with something, so come up with something?
Yeah, that's it.
I do. I just have my client, like my staff. I only got like one guy that does it right now. But he does it based on what he hears on the floor, what clients are going through, what the most common themes are, whether it be shoulder injuries, low back pains, or whatever. And he just started writing that about a month ago. And he writes Tuesday, Thursdays newsletters, and clients are loving it. The only thing I think he needs to add to it on the videos that are attached to the exercises to assist with like the back, the shoulder stuff, and everything else. But it's just the topics that he hears on the floor with the clients.
Yeah, broadly, I would say your coaches are going to default more to the technical writing, as opposed to maybe you, who is obviously, may still be in the rotation for your newsletters. I would guess that a lot of you are not talking about like squat technique in your email, or more the technical side of it, right? I see that we tend to default to more the mindset, the habits, kind of the bigger picture. So that's fine, and that's all good as well. So you stay in that. That kind of becomes your like, hey, if I'm reading a piece from Susan, it's going to be about this, versus if I'm reading a piece of content from Patrick, it's going to be about this. And so they also get to know that coach's kind of passions and niche as well. All right. Let's go on to process if we have time. We good? Yeah? Okay. All right. So in regards to your processes, 2 things that you only need to document your processes. 1 is Google Doc, and 2 is Loom. If it's a checklist, and if it's a step-by-step, put it in a Google Doc. If it's let me show you how to do this on a software, let me show you how to add a client in MindBody, let me show you how to use this in Nomly, what have you, then Loom it. And then this is where the work is. We have what I've considered to be one of the most impactful things I've done process-wise this year is we used to have everything in a Google Drive, right? And here's the reality. None of your team is going to go searching for a document or a Loom. right? And so, as you all know, even if you organize it with folders, it can kind of get a little bit messy. So what we did is we took every document, every loom, and we created what we call the Spurling wiki page. It's a table of contents, basically. It's a one-page document, and it has every single thing listed, and it's just hyperlinked to that loom or to that checklist. So now, my team only needs one page. They just need the wiki page. Because from that wiki page, they can get to anything they need. So we like the wiki page for documentation. But we know documentation is just step one. Most of you, I would say, have a pretty good, from what I've gathered, a pretty good base of documentation. But figure out where the gaps are for documentation. Bring it on a wiki page so it's easy to remember and easy to store. But then we need to bring it to life, right? We need to bring this to life. We need to bring it to, this is how we do it. We teach from the process. So when we role play, I always reference, we're going to be role playing session standards today. As a reminder, these are the session standards. Okay, let's practice it. So it's not, this is how I do it, or this is what it should look like. I'm teaching the process. Just like, again, I love sports analogies because I feel like it's so applicable. A lot of the common plays on a team have names to the plays. So they know the name of the play. And then they say, okay, run, the name, and then they know the behind the scenes. So bring it to life, talk about the name of it, not just this is how I do it, because that creates, I would say, a bit of independence of there's not a clear process here. You're just teaching me the way you do it. All right, I'm not going to go through all of them, but if we scroll, maybe we can hit Holly's computer there to scroll. I'm not going to go through these. Most of you already have this, but I call these the essential 11. There are 11 systems. Most of you already have these. If you don't, you can take mine and modify it. But if I was starting from scratch, these are the 11 that I need. So don't feel like you need 37 processes. Sure, are there more than this? Of course. But if I'm starting from scratch, these are the 11. Okay? And for time's sake, I won't go through these, but read them and say, I don't have that. Okay, action item. Oh, I have that? Good. Okay. All right, let's go on to profit. And this is the last one, and I'll wrap up with profit. Okay, so in regards to profit, there were some questions. There's always questions around profitability, and I saw in our topics today, it's like, okay, how do I get more revenue per member? How do I increase my profit? Of course, we want to be focused on profit. If you simplify profit problems in our business, they're usually only about two things. Usually. One is your people. So when we talk about people, we talk about overpaying, too much staff, having above that 40%, just like lifestyle creep, the business creep of my payroll is way over 40%, so I'm not hitting any profit margin. And then your pricing, what you bill people. That's the second thing. So your pricing needs to be right, and your people budget needs to be right. When we look at, I think I have it on here, you can't save yourself into profitability, right? A lot of our other expenses in our businesses are so minor at this level. Again, if I was in next week's meeting at IBA, I would not be talking about this because $100 to them is a big deal. At this level, $100 of a software, you cutting it is not going to change your profit margin at this level. It's just not. So should you track your expenses? Should you watch it? Of course. But you are not going to save yourself into profitability by nixing one software. Think about the big rocks here. Your big rocks are your people. Needs to always stay under 40%. And how much you charge needs to continue to go up year after year after year after year. Otherwise, your profit margin is just going to go like this. Because I don't know about you, but every year it gets more expensive to run my business. And so if I'm not charging more, then my profit margin each year just gets thinner and thinner and thinner. So your pricing and your people are the two variables we got to do deep dives into to make sure we're hitting, because the rest of it is such a minor percentage of your revenue, of your expense line, that it's not going to make a substantial difference. Okay. So some quick nuggets. We've kind of already hit on this, so I want to move forward quickly. But with our people, we want to work hard towards getting towards hourly. No splitting of sessions. I was on a call with a gal from, where was she from, Pat? The woman from like that island that I was talking to, Ghana or something like that. Anyways, and she was giving 70% of every session to a trainer. So understand that you are never gonna make any money in that business ever until we change that. That is like the thing. There is nothing else in that business that we need to fix other than stop giving 70% of every dollar that comes in to the people.
That's what I did when I first started.
Yeah.
As I was coming at, as I was told, you're coming at it from a trainer's perspective, because that's what I've been making as a trainer.
Sure.
And I did that with business.
Right.
So thank goodness I caught it fast enough.
Yep. Yeah, it's the whole like Pat hit on very nicely. It's the whole like, well, it's okay that you made that decision up until today, but it's not working. So if you are doing split, I would challenge you to, again, like we do with pricing, maybe you don't mess with your current people. I understand we don't want to go rock the boat tomorrow and revamp everybody's pay. But going forward, everybody's hourly, and the only I hate to use the word only. I don't want to speak in absolutes, but I like, if you're a salary with me, you are not dictated on time. So many of you know, years ago, I ran an all-salaried team. Everybody on the team was salaried. Coaches, admins, everybody. And what I realized is the coaches especially, like, you cannot outwork a 9 a.m. session. You still have to be there at 9 a.m. Doesn't matter how much you do in the morning ahead of time for prep, you still have to be there at 9 a.m. So if you run brick and mortar gym, there's always going to be the time component. And so people that are paid for time are paid hourly. People that are paid for result are paid salary. So your manager, if you do ever hire a manager, or for those of you that have managers, where if you look at their job, it's more about the result of the job, not about how much hours they worked, that's maybe a salary fit. But for 99% of the team, it's hourly. I talked about this, 40% of your revenue goes towards payroll. We talked about this with Jeff, but another way to look at it is 2.5 times your payroll needs to be your gross goal. So if my payroll is $20,000 a month, then 2.5 times is $50,000. That's my revenue goal. So 40% is the max. Spending, track it, of course. At the same time, you can't save yourself into profitability. We talked about that. Here's a big one at this level. I'll share this. And again, and not picking on anybody, because I've been there and done that, so sharing as a mistake. At this level, please watch your lifestyle and business creep. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not telling you what to spend on, but I was on a call with somebody who was making $20,000 a month, and this is a real number, $20,000 a month, and their transportation, car payments and gas was $2,000 of that. $2,000 a month. Car payments and gas, $2,000 a month. 2 cars plus gas, $2,000 a month. So I understand we want to have the new, and I'm not here to do a financial talk, but please understand, if 10% of your revenue is going towards your car, you will not be profitable. So, yeah, they were doing $20,000 in revenue a month.
I don't think it matters.
It doesn't really matter what you're doing. I mean, I'm not here to tell you what kind of car to drive, but just watch. We were talking about this, I think, this morning. I think Dave brought it up. Like, Dave just moved to brick and mortar. There are more expenses from a garage to brick and mortar. And so you can be bringing in more revenue, but you have to watch the lifestyle creep and the business creep. That's why I love percentages. I cannot stress that enough. 40%, because 40% when you're doing 20 grand and 40 grand is still 40%. The number's higher, but it's still 40%.
I'm just saying the market that we're in California, and inflation and stuff like that, how would you go about, because it's already expensive, and I'm not the cheapest in the area doing what I do. Like, inflation is going up, 28%. But cost of living is usually when you do increases 3 to 5% on rates sometimes, right?
Yep.
That 3 to 5% is that $100 that doesn't make a damn difference
Right.
in any kind of profitability.
Yep.
How do I try to find a happy medium between living expenses and what I'm trying to make in a business so I am profitable? Because that's the issue I'm having right now. It feels like all the more money I bring in, it goes out just as fast because my living expenses are more. Because of inflation, groceries, gas, everything else like that being in California.
Right, right. I don't think that's, I mean, I think California certainly has the extreme of that, but I mean, complete opposite coast, we see the same thing now in Maine, right? I mean, you all know this, if you have kids, it costs $400 a week just for food, right? So, the thing I would say is just pay attention, have your pricing for your clients. So we can talk over the next 2 days about, I saw on the topics list like add-ons and ways to generate more revenue per member, and I know Pat's going to talk about that as well, and continue to add more clients. I don't think there is enough time spent on the pricing of your service. So looking at your service and really pushing that thread of how much can I charge as my base. Sure, I want add-ons, I want more clients, but if I'm putting more clients in at the same profit margin, it's going to take a while to get there, right? So I don't have a direct answer, Dave. I just think it's continuing to look at, your average revenue per member. What is the goal that you want for how many clients? And your pricing always needs to be above that because we have clients that are current clients that are below that.
We keep bringing back in like the add-on, which is something that I have not worked on at all. And I have clients always asking for, supplements, equipment, stuff like that. And it's stuff I have, I just don't push it. I don't market it because I don't have a display area. I don't have anything else. All this stuff is just in my office, right? So.
Yeah, and that will move the needle. And I used the example. I'm not saying go do this. I'm just saying as an example, we did like a 30% price increase and lost 50 clients, and literally generate just as much profit and revenue. So with 80 less clients to manage. So I'm not saying go increase your prices 30%. But when was the last time you did increase your prices? Especially for current people, right? And so it should, as of today, I'm of the approach that every year I'm up every year until something proves differently.
What is your rate that you increase yours?
Well, this was 30% this year, but a normal year is single digits, but not 3 to 5, 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yep. That way they see a single digit. Other things you can do, as we know, is you can move to 4-week billing. So bill every 4 weeks. That way you get that extra bill. Also, psych-wise, there is pricing per week. We have seen as a effective, I would say, sales strategy in the beginning. Just again, the number is not any lower. Total, but it's just easier to grasp, okay, I'm paying $79 a week and you're going to bill every 4 weeks, as opposed to, okay, I got to have another car payment here at $400 a month. It's really the same thing.
Weekly pricing.
Cool. Awesome. All right, last thing for my numbers people, my new favorite metric. I'm talking to you, Jason. There's a lot of you, but Jason and I are number buddies. Profit per training hour. I don't know if you already track this, if any of you already do, but this is a number that when you look at all the changes that you're making from the above presentation, at the end of the day, just doing a quick check of the room, all of us run brick and mortar facilities, which means you will always have hours that you run training sessions. And when I say hours, I'm not saying the session needs to be an hour. I'm saying that you operate a business that's open for a period of hours, and you are constantly trying to maximize in a given hour, how much can I squeeze out of that hour, right? So whether you run 30-minute sessions, 45-minute sessions, small group, large group, I don't care. That doesn't matter for this metric. What matters is there's only so much I can do from 6 to 7 a.m. Can I run multiple sessions? Can I look at my payroll? Can I make my product better? All this stuff that we've talked about. At the end of the day, the metric that matters, profit per training hour. Because I can go double my revenue, but if my personal profit per training hour is decreasing, it's a phenomenal metric. So you just add up training hours in the month. I've just started doing it monthly. It's not like a weekly thing. Just at the end of the month, take all your training hours, so figure out your net profit, divide it by how many training hours you did, and that's your profit per training hour.
And because if you have different, we have one-on-one training, semi-private, we have large group, it's just
Doesn't matter.
across the board.
Yep.
Just however many hours of all those three combined.
Correct. So it's looking at, for clarity, it's not looking at from a standpoint of like one-on-one versus small group. It's just saying I'm in the business of helping people from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. as a simple example. That's probably not going to change drastically over the next couple of years. Like none of us, I heard a couple, I think it was Ben going to Crunch Fitness this morning, open 24 hours a day. Right? I mean, I would say, unless you're planning on going that model, this number is very accurate because our training hours are not going to expand a ton. What we do in each hour could, right? So paying attention to profit per training hour.
So are you looking at just literally the hours you're training? So if you're
Correct.
9 to 5, but you're only training 6 hours of that day.
Correct. Yep.
Do you
Correct.
ever go, well, you guys are running, do you ever look per hour? Are you looking at which, like
Yeah,
6
yeah.
a.m. versus 11 a.m. and seeing how much am I?
Not really. I'm just looking at more from a global. I mean, yes, in the weeds, once you get into that, at the end of the day, like any number, it could just be a number, but it's more like I wanted to first figure out what the base was.
Yeah.
And then really, this is like one thing that we need to be very big on is we made a decision, and it could be like take the 20 decisions that you just decided in the last hour and a half on my presentation, and you make one of them. Does your business get better because of it? What does better mean? For us, we keep the profit of our business. We don't keep the revenue. So why not measure profit per training hour? Profit first is mandatory at this stage. That's the non-negotiable. And then finally, I'll say it I feel like every week now. But it's super, super, super important. And my final note is I'm very confident saying that very few, if any of us in this room today will sell our current business for a substantial amount of money. And that is not meant to be negative, but that is meant to be the reality of the business that we chose is a cash flow business, not a cash out business. And so please, when you do start to generate cash flow, please take that out and put it into something other than your business. Put it into investment accounts, put it into real estate, put it into something that appreciates, something that grows, something that you could cash out. The line that I think stuck, I know Shelby mentioned it stuck with him, is it's like, okay, cash flow versus cash out. I understand that with my business, but where I'm going is take your cash flow and make sure you move it into something that you can cash out on. That's you don't need to do real estate, you don't need to do investment accounts, you can do whatever. But my filter for that whatever would be, does it have a long-term, and everybody's long-term here is different, but does it have a long-term cash out? So, that's the 4 Ps. Any other questions?
What do you think is a good, you mentioned profit per training hour. What do you think is a good number for that?
I don't know yet. Just started tracking it. For context, for us, we're about $25. Sad, isn't it?
Profit per hour or session? Like if you can run.
Looking at we're doing it right now per session, so that's 423 sessions.
Different if like you can only run one group and I can run 3.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
That's what spaces becomes a limiting factor.
So I was going to feel like at 6 we can have.
So for clarity, training hour and operating hour, you could argue you could do both, but 423 sessions over say 20 grand in profit.
So you got to take this
Each power. 4.3 within our 3.3.
And you, if we block off the middle of the day, meeting whatever else, 12 to 2. You said you still factor those hours in when you're paying expenses like lights and everything, even if you don't plan to offer sessions?
At our stage, we don't, because I'm very confident that we're never going to offer training at that hour. So I want to know for the sessions that we offer. What is the profit per training hour? So again, this is a new metric. So for clarity, we've been tracking it for 2 months, September and October. I can only do it at the end of the month. You could look at it, I think what Jeff's, for my numbers, folks, if you can bear with us here, what we're arguing a little bit back and forth on is training hours versus operating hours. Training hours meaning I run 400 sessions a month, right? That's how many sessions were in mind body, as opposed to I'm open 12 hours a day, 20 days a week, or sorry, 20 days a month. How many hours is that? That would be I'm open, or I'm operating that many clock hours, as opposed to training hours. Does that make sense? Either way, like any number, again, I'm only 2 months into it, but I don't necessarily care which of those numbers. I just want to make sure that when I'm growing and I'm changing, that I'm actually increasing my profit per, right? I reread, where some of this stuff has come from is I reread Good to Great. For those that have not read it, please read it. But I reread Good to Great because I felt like I was getting away from some of that stuff, like the whole hedgehog concept. And their profit per is like, what is our profit per? They call it the economic engine. In our business, what is the profit per? And at first, when I first read the book years ago, I was like, profit per client. That seems obvious, right? Profit per client. Measure how much profit I generate from each client. But then I was like, well, wait a minute. That doesn't necessarily make sense, because I could have, like, if I have 50 clients versus 350 clients, what if that's not my goal, is more clients? But per training hour, at least right now, I'm reserving the right to change. I think the economic engine of this business is profit per training hour. I think.